Well, hello, class, and welcome back. This is Mr. Brown. I am at home recovering from my second vaccine shot. So it's pretty rough. So I am recording this so that you will know what to do today with your sub. Thank you for logging in. Please go to your roadmap. On your roadmap, you will see that everything that you're going to do. So you'll have the warm up. You're going to do the warm up. Then next, you are going to watch one of these two videos about the myth of the creation of Aztecs, the myth of how the Aztecs started. So you're going to watch this one and then the second one. It shouldn't say or, you're going to watch both. The second one is a bit gruesome. So if you're not into, if you're squeamish, you don't like gruesomeness, then you might want to skip that one. And that's okay. But it is really good and interesting. Then everyone is going to watch this video, which is about Mesoamerica and the start, which native tribes, indigenous people started in that area of Central America. Then you are going to pick one of these two. So you will pick either the PG version, which is 7 minutes long, or the other one, which is a bit R-rated. It gets a little gruesome. Again, because we're studying the Aztecs, they're violent people. And there's a lot of hearts ripped out and sacrifices to the gods. So you will watch those, and then you are going to do the slideshow. And I will narrate the slideshow here in the second part. So if you are ready to watch the videos, pause here and come back. No, seriously, pause here, watch the videos, then come back. Okay, I hope you paused and watched the videos. So you should have watched video one, the myth of creation, the short version of how the Aztec people came to Earth, or were created. Then we have the myth of how the Aztec people got started, which you should have watched that as well. Then you watched one of these two. You watched the Mesoamerica, which was everything leading up to the Aztecs. And then you picked either the PG or the rated R version of how things went down. All right, so now we are going to get into the slideshow. So the way I have these slides set up is there's like a mini quiz after a couple of the slides. So make a copy of these slides. So you'll have your own copy and you could type right on the slides. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to answer the warm-up question, which is, what are the names of the mountains on the east and west side of Mexico? So that is your map assignment. You should remember from last week. Please wrap your answer, and there you go. These are the learning targets or standards that we're covering in this unit. And then we have our start. So let's begin. Okay, so you should start a new section in your notebook. And this section is the Aztecs, an empire unlike any other. That's Mr. Blazek's title. Yes, I know this says trimester 2. It's really trimester 3 now, but we usually do this trimester 2. So unit 2. Alrighty, let's get going. So as you recall from the video, civilizations, the Aztec Empire was made of over 15 to 20 million people, and they lived in over 500 different cities and towns. So this is a really big area that we're talking about. And this is really in central Mexico. So where you put Mexico City on your map, this is the rest of it. Or that's the starting point, and then out from there is the rest of it. So those are the other 500 towns and cities. And there were many different groups that existed here. Um, and when they took over different groups, that made their country or empire more powerful. So they get more technology, they learn new ways to organize, all kinds of things. And so when you absorb another culture or another empire, then you gain their benefits, their knowledge, their technology. And so that's how they move forward. All these groups, though, were ruled by the most powerful group of them all, the Aztecs. Now, please remember the Aztecs were not actually called the Aztecs. They didn't call themselves that. They called themselves the Mexica. The Aztecs are what the Spanish named them later when they conquered them. So this is kind of a timeline for you. We talked about this 10,000 approximately 10,000 years ago is when humans crossed the land bridge. I think we actually, the more modern information says about 13,000 years ago, but 13 to 10,000 years ago, humans walk across the land bridge from Asia into the new area, the new world, the Western Hemisphere. About 5,000 years ago is when people start farming. And so before that, people just didn't think of staying in one place and growing food. As technology catches up and they figure out like how to get water to different areas, how to use seeds from plants, then they figure out you can take a seed from a plant a fruit that you ate, and it would grow into a new plant. And so they just discover that around 5,000 years ago. And then they decide to stay in one area and wait for this plant to grow. So think about the first person who suggested that. They were probably like, nah, dude, we're not going to just stand here for 2 months. And then lo and behold, dun, 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 a little plant grew. So then people started moving down towards the south into the Mexico area. And about 3,000 years ago is when the first empire comes together, and those are the Olmecs. So the Olmecs are kind of famous for having these giant heads in their art, and I think they were called the Rubber People. I don't really recall why, but that was the first real group that takes over in the area. And then 1,500 years ago, the Teotihuacan take over, and they kind of dominate the area. It's not that the Olmecs lasted that long, they did not. It's just that this is the next big group that takes over. And so when the Teotihuacan fall apart, there's years that go by, and then the next group takes over, and those are the Toltecs. And the Toltecs take over about 1,000 years ago, and then 700 years ago are the Aztecs. So this is instead of doing a quiz or a test, um, I put these slides in so you could just do this as you go. And you might think, well, obviously it's very easy, it's on the other slide. But the actual process of answering this makes the slides more interactive. And so your brain is going to remember it better instead of just reading a slide. So please type in the answers on your own copy and what goes in each space. So, the land of Mexico. So, physically, we went over the physical geography a little bit when we talked about the maps last week, but it is a very diverse area. And so, there are mountains on both sides, which you should have figured out were the Sierra Madres. Madres means mother, Sierra is mountain, so those are the mother mountains. And then in the center is the valley. And then in that center area, we talked about it was kind of higher up. It's not actually all the way down to sea level. It's actually quite a bit higher. It's about 6 to 7,000 feet, which is about evergreen. I think we figured out evergreen is 7,200 feet above sea level. So it would be the elevation between evergreen and probably Lakewood, to give you an idea, which is kind of ironic since we live in an area where that is true. There's the big valley. There are rivers coming off the mountains as the water comes together. They create rivers. And then those rivers, depending on which side they're on, if they're on the outside of the mountains, then they're going to go out to the oceans, the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific Ocean. In the center, if they pool up, then that creates lakes. And so those lakes are going to be very important, and they're the key to the Aztecs. So the latitude that they're at is a little below us, and so that gives them very hot conditions. And that area, the soil isn't very good, and so that leads to not good areas for farming. And so it takes some skills to figure out how to farm and how to find the lakes to live around. Okay, so please fill in this quiz next. And this is, again, giving you time to figure out what is on the slide before. Pause here and fill it out. No, really, pause here. Okay, I guess we're back. So we did talk about this valley, and they call it the Tehuanacan Valley. And this is where early farming began in North America about 700 years ago. And so it began in this area of central Mexico in the center. And so on our map, when we found Mexico City, which is right there, this is just a little bit above um, in that area. That's where the first farming begins. Okay, and then the Aztecs are going to be down here. So here's a map of present day Mexico, and you can see the border, which we had talked about in other last week, the physical border, which is the Rio Grande River, and the political border, which is drawn at the bottom of Mexico, Arizona, and California. Okay, so the early Aztecs, they modeled themselves a great deal after the Toltecs, who lived about 1000 AD to 1150 AD. And the Toltecs built pyramids to honor the gods. And so they actually stole that idea from the Olmecs. And the Olmecs were the people that really started building these giant structures to honor the gods. One of the benefits is this whole area has a lot of limestone, and so limestone allows them to build better. They figure it out quicker. As you heard from the videos, the Aztecs were a poor tribe. They were wandering. They were the outcasts. Nowadays, we would probably say they were we would call them religious zealots, which means they were so into religion, it actually affects how, like, everything is based on religion and the gods, and that kind of makes that they decide that they have to make sacrifices. So it's very uh, dark direction, I guess you would say, for with religion. They took refuge in Lake Texcoco, which is the Valley of Mexico. In the center, there is a giant lake. And you're not going to find it on any maps now because that lake is gone. But it was a huge, huge lake. Really, really big. And so between 1325 and 1345, people started to build villages around the lake. And a lot of people actually moved into this area to build villages, lots of different tribes. And so this kind of shows you the different tribes and the different parts of the lake, like Texcoco actually was made up of a couple other parts, other lakes. And so along this, you see the names of other tribes that landed there. And so the Aztecs come in, or the Mexica, and they come in this area, they come down here, and really by the time they get there, everything's kind of dibbed up. People have already settled the area, and there's not really space for them. And so they make a deal with the Colhutacan, and who are right here in this area. And the king is very generous, and he says, "Yeah, you guys could hang here and use this shore area and just live here. And, don't you have to live in this kind of bad area, but at least it's an area." And the area actually had lots of snakes and insects, which would attack them. And the Mexica believed that um, the gods wanted, the gods were mad at them, and that's why they kept attacking them with bugs and serpents. And they actually um, decide that because the gods are angry, the gods are telling them to do something different. Don't just sit here, do something different. And so, um, as this says, as a result, when the Mexica arrive in the Valley of Mexico as a semi nomadic tribe, so nomadic means you travel around, as they arrive here, most of the spots are taken. In roughly 1248-ish, they first settle in Chapultepec, which is a hill on the west shore of Lake Texcoco. And there's a lot of springs there. Chapultepec in Spanish means grasshopper. So they land on Grasshopper Hill, which is where all the insects were. Um, and so in time, they decide to move on, and they stay in the Cohotacan, and they give them permission to settle in that area, like we talked about. And then things go wrong. They're in that area, and it seems easy enough. They decide to marry their important person to the daughter or the princess of the Coholtacan. And so, since they've adapted to the culture, they're all friends. Um, so they ask for the daughter's hand in marriage so that they could connect the two. And so in 1323, they asked the new ruler of the Coholtacan, Achametal, for his daughter in order to make her into a goddess because she's so amazing. And unknown to the king, the Mexica actually plan to sacrifice her. And this is when things get crazy. So if you are squeamish, you might want to skip the next 30 seconds to a minute. So they bring her in to have this big festival, and they say, "All right, we're going to take her in and get her ready, and we're going to make her into a goddess, and then she's going to marry our people." And so the king's like, "Yeah, this is great. Thank you." And when they bring her in there, they do what anyone would do, get her ready to become a princess. And so then at dinner, they present her to the king, and out runs this guy wearing her skin, her face and her skin. And it turns out the Mexica cut off her skin to sacrifice, to free her body to become a goddess. And they wore the skin that she wouldn't need anymore on their body to do part of the ritual. So it is super disgusting, as you could imagine. The king would be really upset. And so he is so stunned and disgusted, he demands that all the Mexica be slaughtered and kicked out. Um, well, slaughtered. And so they actually start executing as many Mexica as they can. And the Mexica, some of them escape and they're forced to flee. And when they do, they run into the water on little rafts and paddle out into the lake to get to safety. So you can see right here, they're running away, and then they get on the rafts and they take these rafts and land on an island in the center of the lake. There's this island, and they talk to the god Huitzilopochtli. I can't remember how to say it. But Huitzilopochtli is the god of war, and he's the god that they decide to follow. And he's the one who told them not to live in the snakes and insect area. He's the one that told them to cut off the face of the daughter to honor him. And so he tells them go into the lake to look for safety. And so they take a raft and they find an island. And then they pray to him and he says, here's the deal. If you find the sign, then you will know where to build your city. And he actually, I forgot, this actually started way back. They've been searching and looking through the lands for many years, looking for the sign. And so on the island, he says the sign is coming closer. And so they find the sign, which is an eagle on top of a cactus eating a serpent or a snake. And so, like, if you think about that, how often would a eagle eat a snake? Probably pretty often. Like eagles eat snakes and they're on a river or a lake, so it's probably common. But he says, Huitzilopochtli says, if you see that, that's actually me. I will show myself as the eagle, and when you see me, then you'll know where to build your city. And so they see him, and you may notice if you know anything about flags and Mexico, on the Mexican flag today, it has in the center an eagle on a cactus holding a snake in its talons. So the Mexico or the Mexicans um, still honor their Aztec heritage. And so Mexican actually is pronounced, the X makes a sh. So the Mexica are actually Mexica, and then the people are Mexican, and Mexico is the city of the Mexica. So that's why the word Mexica seems like you've never seen it before, but actually you've seen it all along. That's what Mexico is named after, the Mexica people. So they decide to build their city there, Tenochtitlan. And so once they see the sign, they get to work. And we're going to do so that's where they start the city. The city becomes huge, the biggest city in the entire Western Hemisphere. Um, and the population is equal to some of the biggest cities in European history, like Rome. So, quick quiz, filling this in, and please fill in this quiz part. I will pause right here. Pause right here and fill it in. And part two is this next slide. Fill that in. Okay, so Tenochtitlan is the city they build. And like I said, it is the biggest city known in the Western Hemisphere at the time or until Europeans built our giant cities. You could see it's right in the center of this valley where all the rain comes off of the mountains and then fills up in the center. These are some artist drawings of what it looked like There were drawings that existed, I guess, and in descriptions of writings of what the city looked like. There's journals from Cortez when he lands for Spain and he sees it. They draw pictures of what it looked like. They write about it. They say it is the biggest city he's ever seen. It is clean. It is a lot of it is gold colored, and so he thinks it's some of it is made of gold originally, and he just talks about like the size of it is nothing the Spanish had ever seen, and it's beautiful. All the buildings are painted beautiful colors. There's no trash, there's no litter. If you think about in Europe at this time, they had just finished the Black Plague, which was there because the cities were so disgusting and poop was in the streets because they would just throw their nastiness everywhere, and rats and fleas were everywhere. This was not like that at all. It was beautiful, it was clean, it was crisp, it was amazing. And so here's some other pictures. These tall buildings are temples, and so you would want a temple higher up because you want it higher to the gods. And yeah, okay, Tenochtitlan. Around 1,000 people lived within the city. The causeways, which are little walkways on the ocean, connected the center island to the outside cities. So as they expand their civilization, they start to build cities out on the outside of the river. And then they connect them. You can see on here lines, and those are called causeways. So they're kind of like long, long bridges that connect the city to the outside. Because the city is in the middle of the lake, it is easy to defend, and that's what gives them the advantage. It's hard to come and attack them because you'd have to take rafts out here, and then if you ran on these causeways, these bridges or roads, they could knock them in so that you can't and seal off the city so that you couldn't get over. So you couldn't just follow their roads and attack them. So it was very good defensively. They also had aqueducts, which are like piping, which could carry fresh water into the city. They had markets each week, and you could come, it would be like a giant flea market. You would come in and buy, sell, trade, all kinds of different things that people find from different lands. And so this is like the center of this whole valley area. You could come from far and get the most amazing things or trade the most amazing things. So we're going to take another quiz now, please. Please quiz now. Okay, we're almost done, so hang in there. Actually, we are done because this is going to go into the people. And so that is going to wrap up today's lesson. The extra time you will use to finish up your map work. Make sure your maps get finished, completed. Make sure you watch the videos. Please don't get hooked on the videos and watch further because you'll find out the ending. So I don't want you to know the ending yet. The video should have just brought you up to um, what we talked about. Okay, so please don't find out what happens to them yet. We will talk about it on Wednesday and Thursday. All righty. So you are finishing your quiz, finishing the videos, then you are working on your map, your slides for explorers, or your vocabulary words. All righty. Hopefully that does it. And if you want to look up things like art, that would be fine, and do some more research or research on the city of Tenochtitlan. You could watch more videos or do research on that. If you want to turn in a paragraph, I will give you extra credit for any work you do about the Aztecs getting started, not any further, just as far as we went, getting started, or if you want to do research on the city of Tenochtitlan. Alrighty, I hope you guys are doing great. I will see you tomorrow. That's it for today. Goodbye.